Hello my YouTube friends, I got another awesome overlay tutorial to show you today. It covers some new techniques and answers a question I got a lot on another video. And of course, it's all using free software. So let's get to it. My analytics tell me that 80% of the people watching my content are not subscribed. Am I doing something wrong? Let me know in the comments. But if you are looking for tools, tips, and tricks to help make you a better YouTuber or a live streamer, why not subscribe to the channel and click that bell so you don't miss any new content. The free software we're gonna be using today is DaVinci Resolve. Now there's a link in the description down below so you can download it and follow along with me. That is the best way to learn, right? Today I want to start by answering a question that a lot of people asked when I did an OBS mask tutorial. The mask tutorial works very similarly to today's method. A lot of people asked where I got the video and was it free? Well, come on people, we're YouTubers. It's not hard to create your own videos. So today I'm going to show you how to do that first. In order to get footage, you can do all kinds of different things, but the main thing is to just find an interesting pattern or maybe put a bunch of lights in the background that you can blur up or whatever. Now I'm gonna do it on this weird silver thing that comes covering a TV. And all I'm really gonna do, and I could do this in focus or out of focus. I chose to do it in focus. That's why the actual screen has all those red little cross hatches on it. That's how Sony shows me that something is in focus. The other thing I'm going to do is make sure that my camera is set at the highest frame rate that it does. In my case, this camera will do 120 frames per second. And the reason why I'm doing this is because it allows me to put the whole piece of footage in slow motion. And that's always nice because if I want to slow it down or I want to speed it up, I like to have as many frames as I possibly can. So I'm going to film it at 1920 by 1080, which is HD, and I'm going to film it at 120 frames per second. And if you film it at 4K or whatever, however you film it is just fine. The point is you're just trying to get some interesting pattern, a little bit of movement, and you'll understand where this is going once you see how we process the video. And for anyone who's seen my OBS mask overlay video where I showed you how to use OBS masks to turn them into overlays, we're going to use a very similar technique to this. And of course this would be the video that you're using. But here's how I did it. I just set my camera up the way I wanted it, hit record, and then slid it past this interesting pattern right here on this crazy weird film. I mean, you could do a wood pattern, you could do lights, you can do the sky, you could do anything you want. It really is dependent upon what kind of color scheme or colors that you want to have in your overlay and how you want them to move. Your creativity is the only limitation here. And you'll see later why you're probably going to want to go ahead and use a tripod or something to get this footage to make it as smooth as possible. But for me, I'm just kind of trying to show you how to do it, so I just did handheld. Obviously, the better and smoother this footage is, the more interesting it's going to look for your overlay. Okay, now we've got some interesting footage. If you like this make your own overlay series, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. That helps others find it as well. So let's get right into DaVinci Resolve. So here we are in DaVinci Resolve, and I'm going to select New Project. I'm just going to type in the name of this project. I'm going to call this Mask Overlay. Then I'm going to hit Create, and this opens up DaVinci Resolve. I'm going to go into File, and I want to go to my project settings, and I want to make sure that this is the same as my actual OBS. So 1920 by 1080 and 30 frames per second is what I'm looking for. You may be using 60 frames per second, so you can set it up that way. Then I'm going to click this edit button down here at the bottom, and I'm going to drag that footage I just took into our no clips in media pool here. And now there is a clip in the media pool. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this clip down into our timeline. But let's go ahead and click play. And you can see it moves really quick and it's kind of jittery. And if I want to fix that problem, the best way to do it is to put this into a much slower frame rate. And that's why I record at 120 frames per second. So I'm going to right click on the clip and I'm going to go up here into retime controls. And then I'm going to drop this down and I'm going to change the speed to 10%. And then I'm just going to click play. And now we can see that all the jittery stuff is gone. It moves much smoother. And here's another way that you can change the speed. I can right click on the clip and then I can go to change clip speed. And here I can just use the slider to adjust exactly what I want the speed of the clip to be. So I'm gonna adjust it down to 15% and click change. And there we go. Now we can see it's a little faster than the 10%, but I think it gives us a little bit more of a smooth type scroll. And I think that's gonna work for what we're looking for. So now we have to shorten our clip because we certainly don't need a long clip for our overlay. I generally like about 10 seconds. So I'm gonna use the scroll bar here to go through and look for 10-second area where we have something that looks pretty interesting. And then I'm gonna use this little clip tool here and I'm gonna clip it and I'm gonna go ahead and cut out this first part. And then what I'm gonna do is take our arrow there and drag it back to the beginning. And then I'm gonna go out 10 seconds and I'm gonna clip it again. So I just drag this out to 10 seconds and then I can use the left and right arrow so I can get it exactly. And then I'm gonna clip it and I'm just gonna right click on this clip here and cut that one. And there we go. Now we have 10 seconds of this clip and we'll just play through it quickly to see that we've got what we want. We've got it nice scrolling to the left, kind of interesting pattern. That'll work. So now I'm gonna right click on this clip and I'm going to open it in the Fusion page. And it takes a couple seconds, but boom, here we are in Fusion and you can see our clip. We've got our media out and the media in. So I'm gonna switch this so I'm on one screen and then I'm gonna make it a little bigger. I'm gonna go up here and I'm gonna go to 25% so I can see everything. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go ahead and use this B-spline tool. I'm gonna drag this out here and I'm going to add it in before our media clip. And you can see our media clip totally disappeared. Well, that's okay. The B-spline, we just put a point here. You have to make sure B-spline is selected. And then I'm gonna put a point here and I'm gonna drag and put another point here. You do this just by clicking the mouse button and we'll put a point down here. We'll put a point over here and we're gonna connect it back together. And there we go. You can see this looks kind of weird. I'm gonna uncheck solid and play around with the settings here. I don't want soft edge. I want a little bit of border width. So you can see, there we go. So now we've got a little bit of a border and you can kind of probably see where we're going with this, but we don't want these big, long swooping corners. So what we're gonna do is before and after each of the corners, we're going to add another point into our B-spline so it makes these corners sharper. And I just like to try to get as close as I can to that corner point and add another point in there. It's a pretty simple process. And once we do that, we have the initial box for our overlay. There we go. So if I click play, you can see this is not moving in slow motion. It's moving really quickly. And that's kind of just the way that Fusion works. But if I flip back over into edit and watch it, you can see that it is moving in slow motion. And there you go. You kind of see the effect that we have here for this outer box. And so far, it's really not all that interesting, but we can do a lot with this. So the first thing I'm going to do, we're going to go back into Fusion. And I'm gonna right click on this and I'm gonna go up here to add tool and I wanna go to color and I'm gonna go to color curves. And let's just drag this out a little bit here. And then over here on the right, I'm gonna uncheck blue and red. And then I'm just going to adjust this curve up and you can see that our little silver piece is turning shiny green. And I like that. It's gonna fit in better with the background color of my live stream. So then I'm gonna right click here again and I'm gonna add another tool after our color curves. I'm gonna add a blur defocus. Now I like the defocus because it allows you to add a little bit of that bloom that gives it a really cool effect. So you can see we're blurring it up a little bit, but we're also kind of making some bloom around those shiny little points. And I like that. Now it's obviously going to depend on what type of footage that you're using. You can do all kinds of things with your footage and just right clicking and going through those tools and playing with them is going to give you all kinds of really cool effects. And you can see how ridiculously fast it actually moves in Fusion. You have to go over into edit to see the actual speed, but that'll work for us at this point. So what I'm going to do is kind of move these up here and I'm going to select them all and then I'm right clicking and I'm going to go to copy. I'm going to right click in the box and go to paste. And now I have another collection of exactly what we just created, except for I don't really want the B-spline. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the B-spline and I'm going to add this rectangle here onto the end. And let's connect this by dragging this up so it puts it below that one. And there we go. We've merged these two and you can see the box that we just created there right in the center. That's the rectangle. So I'm going to select rectangle and I'm I'm just going to shape this up, and basically just copying the other one guarantees that it's going to have the same look as our outer box. That's why I did that. And I'll just shape this up and drag it down here to the bottom. And there we go. And that gives us a little text box that we can put some information into our overlay. Now you can obviously make these shapes and sizes as complicated as you want. You don't have to have a full box when you're using the B-spline tool. You can just have a few lines. So you can create as many lines as you want and make it all kinds of complex. But I think that's what we want, so we're just going to export this. So let's go over here to the right and click on this little Launchpad button here, and I'm going to play it through once just to see that it's what we're looking for. And we're going to go up here to the top left, and we're going to type in the name of our file. We're going to browse, and we're going to go to the location where we want our file to be saved. Then we're going to go ahead, and we want QuickTime format, and we want it to be in the codec uncompressed. We want BGRA 8-bit, and the A stands for alpha, so we want to go down here a little ways, make sure it's 1920 by 1080 and 30, and we want to export alpha, and then we want to add it to the render queue, and then we want to go over here to the right and click render, and it's going to render out our clip. And this is going to take a moment or two to render. Now that's finished, but you can see this is like a 2.5 gig clip. It's massive. So we're gonna go into the Shutter encoder. It's totally free. There's a link in the description so you can download it. And I'm gonna go to browse, and I'm gonna select the overlay that we just created. And then I'm gonna go down here and choose the function VP9. And you can see this is going to create a WebM file. I'm going to click change so that I can select the destination for the file that this is going to create. And I'm just going to browse to the location where I want the file to be saved. Then over here on the right, I'm going to click max quality, and I'm going to go into advanced features, and I'm going to select enable alpha channel. And now we're all set, so I'm just going to click start function, and it's going to export this clip into a WebM. And you're not even going to believe how tiny this little clip is going to be. There we go. It's 5,000 meg as opposed to 2 gigs, almost 2.5 gigs. It's a big difference. So now we're going to go into OBS, and we're going to go ahead and zoom this in a little bit, and I'm going to add my camera in here. So I'm going to go to video capture device and click OK and select my camera, and I'm going to change from default device to custom. Make sure that 1920 by 1080 is selected. Go down and use custom audio device and select my microphone down here so I have the right one. We're going to select cam link and click OK. So now I have my camera in here, and I check to see my microphone is working, and it is. So all we have to do is add our overlay. So I'm going to click this little plus, and I'm going to go to media source. I'm going to call this media source overlay. It's always good to name your stuff so you know what it is. Now I'm going to click OK. I'm going to browse to our media source right here, overlay VP9, and click open. I want this to loop. It's only 10 seconds, and we can use hardware decoding when available and close it when it's inactive. So if we're switching to another scene, we can close it up and click OK, and there we go. There's our overlay. Now we can adjust the size of the overlay if we like, move it, make it bigger, make it smaller, move it, make sure it's centered properly, all that kind of stuff. And we can go into properties, and we can actually use the speed to adjust it even slower if we like. Now if you go too slow, you're gonna notice that it gets really choppy, and nobody wants a choppy overlay. You don't want it to be too distracting, because then it's too fast and distracting, but you do want to make sure that it at least looks okay. So you can move this up a little bit and click OK. And now it's moving slow enough as to not be too terribly distracting, but it's also not choppy. And you can see that this can look a lot more like an overlay just by adjusting the sides and making sure that it fits in the way that you want it to fit, and then adding some other elements. So once I get this adjusted to just the size I'm looking for, there we go. I'm going to go down here and click the plus, and I'm going to add some text to our text box here. And I think I want this to be some scrolling text. So I'm going to put scroll in here and click OK. Now I'm going to select my font. And I always like this Aldo the Apache. It just looks unique and interesting. And I'm going to go ahead and type in what I want to be in my scrolling text. And if you're going to use scrolling text, most times you're going to want to make sure that you put it all on one line. Because if you do create a second line, well, it's just going to basically create a second line of scrolling text. And that's really not what you want. So I'm just going to write a nice long thing here, thanking my amazing supporters. colors. And what I like to do at the end of any scrolling text is make sure that I add a lot of spaces at the tail end. And this means that the beginning and the end aren't going to run together as if they're one word. So I add a bunch of spaces at the end, and then I'm going to scroll down here just a little bit. I'll put another little space in here. And then I'm going to scroll down here just a little bit. Now, if you enable anti-aliasing, you're going to want to do that. It makes the edges a lot sharper. What I'm going to do is I want to add a gradient. So I'm going to check this gradient box right here, and I'm going to select the color, and I want it to be kind of this blue color here. I'm going to click OK. And you can see now we have a really nice gradient going on here. And then what I want to do is I want to select outline. And I want to change the color to outline. I want to make it black, and then click OK. And I'm going to adjust the size of that outline up just a little bit. So this adds a nice deep outline to the back of my text. Now I'm going to resize it. And you can see this can sometimes be a little weird, especially when you're dealing with text as long as what I'm using. But with a little patience, I can drag this and resize it down to the size of the box that we're trying to fit it in. And that's probably about right. But you can see it hangs way off the screen. So I'm going to drag this all the way to the right, and I'm going to use the Alt key, and then I'm going to drag this, and that crops that other end. And we're going to fit this in here, and I'm going to Alt and drag again to crop this box right here. That's good. That's exactly what we're looking for. So now I'm going to go ahead and go into filters. I'm going to click filters right here with the scroll text selected, and I'm going to go and click the plus and select scroll. And then I'm going to adjust the horizontal speed, and you can see what this does. It scrolls the text for us. So now we've got some awesome scrolling text. Now you might notice with this technique that you get a little bit of the edges aren't as sharp as you might like. I noticed this myself, and I thought, well, I'd really like the edges to be a little sharper, or maybe to have some flare in the back. So what I did here, I clicked the plus, and I went into color source and click OK. You can name this color source if you like, but I'm going to select a color source that kind of fits in with my regular background, this blue color, and click OK. And now I'm going to use the Alt key, and I'm going to drag these edges so that I can resize this. And so we're using basically the crop tool, the Alt. That's why all the edges turn green. Shows you that it's cropped. And you can see when I put it behind the text box, it gives this blue edging around there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and right click and copy. Then I'm going to right click and paste to duplicate. And I'm going to move this box up here. And I'm going to use that Alt key again and drag this out. And I'm going to have to move that over and Alt key and drag this side out. And then I'm going to use the Alt key and just resize all of these things. I'm going to move it below our overlay here. And then I'm going to use the Alt key again and resize this up, drag these edges in a little bit. And for me, this kind of just adds a little bit more definition to the outside of our box, a little more visual interest. It doesn't make it feel so blurry at the edges. And then I'm just going to take that color source too, and I'm going to duplicate it again. There we go. I'm going to drag this down to the bottom, and I can use my arrow keys to get it in the right location. A little bit of fine tuning. We just need to drag it below our overlay, and then I'm going to unclick on it so I can see the thing. And that looks pretty interesting. So I'm going to right click on that and copy it, and then I'm going to paste and duplicate it right here. And so now I need to go ahead and resize this. So I'm going to drag it down a little bit. I'm going to use the Alt key once again because we are cropping it. Whoop. I moved my overlay by accident, and there's an easy way to keep from accidentally moving pieces you don't want to move. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here into our sources box, and I'm just going to lock these so that they don't move. So only the ones that I'm trying to move are going to move, and this will save you a lot of time and headache if you're going to do this. Then I'm going to hold the Alt key, and I'm just going to drag the edges so that we can crop these up. And I'm gonna go ahead and hold the Alt key and drag this up here, and Alt and drag this one down here. And of course, we've reached the edge of the box. So I'm gonna go ahead and drag this down and use the arrow keys to kind of get it lined up exactly where I want it. I'm gonna use the Alt key and drag this up here to the top. And I just want to make sure this lines up properly so it's going to really match the edges of all of our other stuff. And I'll drag this below our overlay, and there we go. And I just want to go ahead and copy and duplicate that vertical one, and I'm going to drag it over to the other side and use the arrow keys to finely tune its exact location, and then I'll drag it below our overlay, and there we go. So now we have a really nice kind of blue background here. Just have to fine tune it and make sure everything everything looks right. And that kind of looks interesting and funny. I like how this looks because it kind of has that old school game show look to it, like what you'd see in the 50s and 60s. And really the only limit is your imagination. It only looks that way because I used blur and because of the type of background that I decided to create. But it's obviously going to look a lot different if you're going to use lighting or some kind of bokeh effect in the background. It all has to do with what kind of mood you're going to create with the video footage that you get. But there you go. Now we've got a really unique animated overlay that you can use to really make your live stream stand out. If you want to see more ways to create animated overlays using free software, you should definitely check this playlist out right here. And if you're always looking for tools, tips, and tricks to help make you a better YouTuber or live streamer, subscribe to the channel. My name is Microfire Jr. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.